Good morning, everyone. I'm Janet Camarena, Director of Transparency Initiatives for Foundation Center. Welcome to today's Cracking the Funding Code program, focusing on tech corporate giving trends. This program is part of our Funding for Education Special Focus Month, sponsored by PG&E. Before we get started, for those of you not familiar with Foundation Center, I'd just like to take a moment to provide some general information. And just out of curiosity, how many of you are at a Foundation Center program for the first time? Anybody? Great. Our plan is working. We find we tend to be a well-kept industry secret, so programs like this are a way to spread the word because we really are a gift from foundations and corporations to the nonprofit community. Our mission is to strengthen the social sector by advancing knowledge about philanthropy in the U.S. and around the world. One of the ways that we do this is by operating a free library and resource center upstairs on the 6th floor. So for those of you that raised your hands, or for those of you for whom it's been a while since you've been in, I invite you to come in and check out the resources upstairs after this morning's program. We have a state-of-the-art library that's free, open to the public, no membership is required. So that's the gift from foundations and corporations part. We encourage you to make use of it. Up there you'll find free Wi-Fi access and free access to our foundation directory online. That's sort of our classic prospecting tool, as well as our new Foundation Maps platform. Anybody here played around with Maps yet? Great. Well, then I want to make sure to give that a plug, it's entirely available for free upstairs. So you don't need a subscription to use it if you're in our library. And the way it's different from Foundation Directory Online is it is a data visualization tool that allows you to map the activity of philanthropy in any region, metro area, or global site. And so for the first time, you're able to see both areas served by philanthropy as well as the geographic area in which the funder is headquartered. But as we all know, sometimes that has nothing to do with where they fund. So you can actually find more easily people outside the usual suspects of your typical networks because it's picking up any capital that's coming in from philanthropy in a particular region. And as a librarian, my favorite part of it is it also charts trends. So you can see over time, if you're working in education, you can see over time, say over the last 10 years, when it's been going up and when it's been going down. And also by population group, you can do that. So it kind of can help you make your case for support because it also includes demographic trends and it forecasts using census data. You can draw a polygon and say this is the region we serve, and 5 years from now, this is what the census projects that community is going to look like demographically. And as you know, that data was out there before, but it's often hard to get, and it's nice that it's consolidated into a platform that has philanthropy data and now demographic data. So come and check it out. As I mentioned, this is part of our Funding for Education Month, and even though this is the last day of the month, our programming in general continues beyond today. So I encourage you to pick up one of the yellow flyers outside that has our July schedule of programs. And our Funding for Education Month does wrap up with one more program after this one. You can stay right here where you are in the room for the next session, which goes from 10:30 to noon and focuses on effectively engaging corporate volunteers in your mission with Taproot Foundation and Genentech. So you can continue diving into content about working with corporations this morning. But before I introduce this morning's program and speakers, I just want to review some logistics. You should have picked up the handout outside with the speaker biographies, and I invite you to look at it now to get to know our panelists a bit better, since in the interest of time, we won't be diving deep into that. We are video recording the program and streaming it live for the benefit of those who can't attend this morning. So when you ask a question, the speaker will either repeat it or we may ask you to come up here. So keep that in mind and hold your questions until prompted by the speaker. To refer your colleagues to this recording later, look for it on the Foundation Center's YouTube channel that has a great and handy archive of other programs we've recorded in the past, or check the program registration page where you signed up for this one, and that's where we always house any recordings and links to recordings. For those of you viewing remotely from home or office, please enter your question into the chat pane in the viewing pane, and we'll try to respond to it there, time permitting. Also, feel free to tweet about the event at #HowTechGives. So without further ado, joining us today, we will hear from Juliana Deans, Manager, Corporate Responsibility for Silicon Valley Community Foundation. She'll be kicking off the program with an overview of some of the high-level trends she's seen in her role at the Community Foundation in Silicon Valley. And then following that, we will have a conversation with her colleagues in a couple of corporations, specifically Patty Nation, Director of Global Corporate and Community Engagement for Xilinx, and Cecily Joseph, Vice President of Corporate Responsibility and Chief Diversity Officer for Symantec Corporation. So please help me in welcoming this morning's speakers. And Juliana, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you, Janet, and the rest of the Foundation Center for hosting us. We're very excited to be talking to you all about how to crack that funding code, how to get the attention of corporations and get them engaged in your mission. So the agenda that we're going to be following is I'm going to give you a really brief overview of Silicon Valley Community Foundation, specifically why am I up here. Talk about some of the trends in the future of corporate giving, give you some tips and advice on engaging specifically with tech companies, switch it over to a panel discussion with my esteemed colleagues, Patty and Cecily from Xilinx and Symantec, and then take audience questions. So without further ado, corporate responsibility at Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Unlike most community foundations, we're actually fairly unique. And it's not just our size. We are the largest community foundation in the world with over $6 billion in assets under management. But from my perspective, I think what makes us truly unique is that we have a team of about 15 of us on the corporate responsibility team that is dedicated to work exclusively with companies, not just in the Bay Area, but actually throughout the country, helping them on their philanthropic goals and objectives. And we do that through our work with them on corporate advised funds, matching gifts, and one-on-one consulting with them. Corporate advised funds, for those of you who are familiar with donor advised funds, they are the same thing, only they are at the direction of corporation versus of an individual. And we work with these companies on their corporate advised funds, helping them make grants both domestically and throughout the world. For matching gifts, we also work with, and for the corporate advised funds, we've got about 100 clients in our portfolio at the moment. Matching gifts is we are actually the back-end processor for a technology platform hosting company called Your Cause, where we do the vetting and the due diligence on behalf of a corporation's grant recommendation to make sure that it is compliant, and then we go ahead and process it in a relationship with that matching gift partner. We work with other matching gift providers aside from Your Cause, but that's probably the one that we're the most well known for. And then consulting. We will do consulting with companies that not only have an advised fund with us or engaged in our matching gift program, but it could be any company. We'll work with them on things like board placement, helping them identify and place their leaders on nonprofit boards, such as yourselves. We'll work with them on things like benchmarking, helping them identify trends and what their competitors are doing out in the marketplace. We could also work with them in helping them get started. Let's say they're a fairly new company and they're trying to figure out how to do corporate social responsibility. Or it could be working with them on how to implement and design a matching gift program. Pretty much, if they can dream it, we'll figure out a way to make it happen. I want to also give you an overview of the giving landscape in general. And I think the most striking thing to realize is that out of this entire charitable donation pie, individual giving is by far the largest component of all charitable donations. Individuals gave 72% at $258.5 billion. The next slice of the pie is from foundations, both public and private, at 15%, representing almost $54 billion. The next largest segment at 8% was from charitable bequests. And then finally, corporations. That's only 5% of the charitable pie. And for a lot of us, I know that's rather surprising. We think, wow, companies, they're the ones with all the money, right? Well, in terms of where the charitable giving is coming from, it's actually from these other groups. So, but diving down into some corporate FAQs, what are the top causes that companies are funding? And we've got 29% are funding education, K through all the way through higher ed. The next big chunk is to health and human services. And then finally, the third largest area of giving is to community and economic development. And that has remained true for a number of years, and we have not seen that change a whole lot. Looking at it from an employer perspective, 9 out of 10 companies are offering a matching gift program, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. And of that, 12% of total corporate cash budget is coming from their support of these matching gift programs for the direct dollars. 6 out of 10 companies offer volunteer time off, VTO, which is also a great way, and we'll get into that again, to engage with companies. And of that, about 30% on average is the number of employees who are actually volunteering through their company. The really, really stellar companies can get it 50% and above, but on average, about 30%. When looking at the tech giving mix, and we look at, let me go back, and we look at that $100 of total giving, the important thing to look at that is out of that $100, $34 on average is going to come from a company's foundation's cash. $42 is going to come from their direct cash, meaning it's not through their foundation. And $24 is going to come from non-cash giving, in-kind, product donations, pro bono, and the like. I did some research in advance of this presentation looking specifically at the Bay Area, the 9-county Bay Area, to see where the tech industry is giving. And I think for me, again, probably the most startling statistic was that the grand total of Bay Area giving from all industries is $5.5 billion, and tech represents 70% of that at $3.8 billion. That sounds like, oh, that's a nice lot of money, right? Well, you actually have to break that down and recognize that the in-kind donations are coming in at $3.4 billion. That means cash giving is under $400 million in the Bay Area that companies are giving in cash. So really important fact to recognize as well when starting to engage with companies. So what are the different types of corporate giving? Well, there's 7 of them. We have foundations. And foundations are when a company can create a separate legal entity, a corporate foundation, which is wholly distinct and separate from the corporation itself. They're typically funded through a company will make a contribution into that foundation, and in general, that gift, that contribution is spent during that year, and then it's refunded, money is put back into it the following year. What this does is once the company makes that contribution, is that money is no longer the company's. It belongs to the foundation. This helps protect that company's charitable giving from profit up and downs. It helps to stabilize that. Corporate contributions are another vehicle that companies use for their charitable giving, and that is everything that company can give as direct cash that does not fall into the foundation giving. Employee matching gifts, which I had touched on earlier, is a very important area as well for all of you to recognize. An employee matching gift, for those who are new to the field, is when a company employee would make a charitable donation to a nonprofit like yourselves, and then have that company match their gift, usually on a one-to-one basis, a dollar-for-dollar basis, up to a certain cap that company has determined. But in some cases, it could go higher. It could be at a 3-to-1 ratio. So when you're working with your donors and your volunteers, ask them on their company affiliation. See if there could be some untapped corporate donations that you're not aware of that they could be applying for. Product and in-kind donations, as we had just mentioned in the previous slide, this is particularly critical when looking at tech companies and Bay Area as well. Product and in-kind can be everything from pro bono to in-kind and service donations. Cause marketing and commercial co-ventures. This is when a company and a nonprofit enter into an agreement. A company will sell a product or a service and then donate a portion of those proceeds to a nonprofit. I think probably the most famous example of that is General Mills' Box Top for Education. That has given U.S. schools about $400 million since its inception in 1996. A recent example of that was a partnership between a tech company and Donors Choose, where they were trying to address the STEM gap, and this was 3M, by the way, and they came up with a game that girls could play on their phones using science skills. And the game was to help find the high school's missing mascot. That raised a lot of awareness for girls on the importance and fun of science, as well as supported about 4,200 schools throughout the U.S. through Donors Choose. So it was a really successful and fun example. Employee volunteer programs. I encourage all of you to stick around for the session following ours, where colleagues of mine at Taproot and Genentech will be diving into skills-based and pro bono and board service. They're also a really great opportunity that corporations look at as part of their giving portfolio, and then board service. Board service is a really meaningful way for companies to lend their business expertise to a nonprofit's issue areas. So some tips and advice on when engaging with tech companies. First, the real basics: know your audience. Do your research. Go onto that company's website. See what types of programs and projects that they're funding. For example, if you're trying to approach a solar company and they've been funding environmental beach cleanup projects and you're with the San Francisco Ballet, I'm not sure how successful you're going to be in that grant application. Another thing is try to figure out who's actually going to be reviewing your application. Is it going to be comprised of an all-volunteer-led council? They might not have that deep subject matter expertise that each of you has. And so I'm not suggesting to dumb it down, but to tell your story in a different way. While if you're making an application to an organization that is having it reviewed by people with strong academic background and credentials, you might want to make it more outcomes and impact oriented in your language. Offer engagement diversification. When I was at Deloitte, I led the corporate social responsibility for the Northern Pacific region. And I loved this. I loved it when I was working with a nonprofit and they would give me a menu of different items to choose from. It could be working with Deloitte's Impact Day, a done-in-a-day volunteer. It could be talking about an event that they had coming up. It could be talking about an in-house volunteer event that I could host on my location, or it could be external at theirs. It could be something that welcomes the entire family. that is focused on team building. But by offering this diverse menu of opportunities to choose from, you're going to stand a better chance of catching that company's interest and identifying with a pain issue that they're trying to resolve. And then tell the story. We hear a lot about storytelling and the importance of it. So as you're engaging with that company, just make sure that you're telling your story and that you're clearly explaining the mission of your organization and the work that you have been doing, and then the outcomes that you have been having and the results. So with that, boy, I got through that quickly. I'm going to switch it on over to panel discussion with Cecily Joseph from Symantec and Patty Nation with Xilinx. So please join me in welcoming them.
We're going to do a little quick set change here too.
Thank you. Actually, we want the screen down.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure.
That's good.
Do we want to keep the projector on then?
Ladies, do you think we're going to be referring to your... It can go on up.
Oh, okay. I feel like I'm hitting the screen though.
Okay. All right. Can you all still hear me? Yeah? Thumbs up in the back? Awesome. All right. Cecily and Patty, mic check? Check, check.
Check, check.
Hello? Okay, all right. So I wanted to, first of all, thank both of you for joining us this morning and lending your time and your expertise and your perspective from your roles at your companies in terms of working with nonprofits. And my first question for both of you is that we hear that tech companies invest deeply in education. As we saw from the previous slide, that's the #1 focus area. And we hear that they're doing it not just as a cause du jour, but as a means of innovation and marketplace survival. Can you please describe your company's response to this? And I'm going to start with Cecily. Cecily.
Sure. Hi,
Sorry.
Cecily. So Symantec is a software company. You might best know us for our Norton antivirus software on your computers. We're based in Mountain View, Silicon Valley. We have about 20,000 employees globally in 50 countries. And the pipeline of STEM workers, engineers, and software developers is critical to our success. So there is a lack of skilled professionals in general, but we also find that when diversity is an imperative for a company, because we think it's important for innovation and it's important for us to be more competitive, that we don't see the diversity that we want to see in our tech companies. So there's also a lack of diverse STEM professionals. So as a result, companies like Symantec invest very heavily in education and building the pipeline of a future workforce.
So great. And Patty.
So Xilinx is a company of about 31 years old. We have a breadth globally. We have about 3,300 employees worldwide. And as an double E type of company, building semiconductors, much like Symantec, the need for qualified tech professionals runs deep. And we like to think of it as K to corporate, so not stopping at higher ed, but actually how do we bring them back into our company, either, I'm sure with you, like interns and other opportunities for that hands-on learning and building that creativity. We also like to use the term STEAM because we found that in our place is that like most tech kind of people, they have a very artistic side to them. And without that innovation and that creativity, we don't see that new innovation coming through in our products. About 85% of our employees are electrical engineers, many with very advanced degrees, distinguished scientists, and we need to nurture that side of them as well. So we really look at that component as we're building our programs.
Great. Recently, Symantec just launched a Cyber Career Connection, or SC3, Cecily, describe, first of all, what is this? Why has Symantec made this investment? And you mentioned your commitment and your tie to diversity. So how does this whole thing work together?
Sure. So about a couple of years ago, we embarked on a mission to create a signature program for the company. We found that we've been investing in STEM in a variety of ways, but a very sort of intuitive CEO said to us, well, you know, that's great, but Symantec's not going to really change the direction of STEM in the United States or the world. We're not going to have that great an impact. So is there something that Symantec could own where we could have more of an impact? So we went through an initiative, and I think it's just important to kind of share how we got to the program itself.
Sure.
So we went through a large stakeholder initiative, and we kind of explored a lot of things that we thought a company like Symantec would do. Maybe we'd become the experts on cyberbullying, right? Because we could help kids deal with that in school, and we explored lots of things. And where we arrived at is realizing that there's a huge shortage of cybersecurity professionals in the world. And that in the United States alone, there's currently 300,000 unfulfilled cyber jobs. And that 20% of those jobs could be filled by people who don't have a four-year college degree or your traditional educational experience. And so we set about creating a program that would target not only that 20%, but would target underrepresented populations in cybersecurity, which are women and professionals of color. And so the program has 4 phases. It has what we call an excite phase. This is where you get people excited about cybersecurity. I'm sure all of you can relate to that. I'm sure no one here is excited about a career in cybersecurity. But it really is an exciting career. And it's a way to really work probably with, I would say, middle school on up, really sharing what cybersecurity career could look like. The second phase is the training and certification phase, where we work with partners, nonprofit organizations, industry groups, community colleges to create curriculum to train and certify young adults primarily, but we are also branching into veterans, to become cyber professionals or to at least start entry-level jobs and begin their career pathway. Third piece that's very critical for this program is an internship, because we found that that's the most important piece to getting job placement, is having experience in the field. So the students are then placed in a 10 to 12 week or longer internship with a company. And the fourth phase is employment. So the goal of this is not just to train people, it's to actually get them jobs. And we launched the program last year at the Clinton Global Initiative. We've run 3 pilots this year. 1 class has graduated out of Brooklyn, and the results are really good. And I have to say these are small numbers we're dealing with, because it's a very hands-on program. It's not online learning. It's in the classroom, real internships. But of the students, we had about 15 students come out of the program. They all are in either extended internships or job placements with great companies like JP Morgan and Citibank. And they, and what I'm hearing back, and I'd say also from a diversity perspective, 95% of them professionals of color, 30% are women, and which is much above the cyber number, which I think right now is about 11%. And I'm hearing really great things back, that these are employees at Symantec and other companies. So just so you know, this is not a pipeline for us. We're not going to hire all of these cyber people. These are folks that we really hope our customers and our partners hire, because we need people that understand how to use the technology related to cyber and how to prevent cyber attacks and keep us all safer, right? So it's a national security issue. But we're finding that people are really excited about hiring these young people, that they possess the skills that they need for these entry-level jobs, and the results so far have been really, really positive.
I have a follow-up question for you on that. How do you plan? You're saying you're starting this pilot out with a very small population. How do you plan to scale?
Yeah, so scaling is truly a challenge for us, because in order to really, right now Symantec is funding the whole project. we're funding the training, we're funding the internship component, we're funding the job placement. And so in order to scale the program, we need to bring additional partners to the table. So I'm happy to say that, for example, one of the programs, the pilots we ran last year, we were able to offer one class. Because we've been able to bring more partners to the table, this year we're going to be able to offer 3 classes, just out of that example. But I think it's going to require us to find additional partners and unique models. We recently announced a program, so this is beyond the shores of the Bay Area, but we just announced a program last week in India, in New Delhi, where we are going to, so same issue, the government has said it's an imperative that cybersecurity skills be developed and worked into the IT curriculum in India for the future generation. And they want to build a whole cybersecurity workforce. And so we said, well, that sounds like a place SC3, which is what we call our program, Symantec Cyber Career Connection, could also add value. And so in addition to Symantec helping create that curriculum with the government, SC3 has stepped up to offer 1,000 scholarships for young women in India so that they can pursue cybersecurity training as well as wraparound services and support. So we're hoping to scale, doing those kinds of things.
Great. And Patty, we just heard, Symantec has made a really deep investment in a signature partnership program. And Xilinx is the global education system that you started back in 2007. Can you describe what that is and how it plays at a local level, and then a little bit more in detail on your STEAM versus STEM?
Certainly. When I first entered into this profession, I'd had a background in sales and marketing, and I was tapped by management to say, we'd like you to come look at this and help us develop a program. And evaluating it, I realized that the company had been investing in an elementary school, but really hadn't taken it much further, and was doing a lot of, let's just say people would come into a conference room as volunteers once a month and look and see what came in the mail. And I'm like, well, this really isn't a program, and it's not having any deep roots, and it's not tying back to the company, it's not strategic. So what we looked at is we asked this elementary school that we'd been working with locally, and then its middle school that it fed to, and then the high school, and we asked them to come in and have a conversation with us. And instead of saying, look, I know you're working really hard to complete a grant for us to read so that we would consider funding you. I said, why don't we just cut to the chase? I'm going to ask you what you need because you don't want to write the documentation. I don't want to read the documentation to figure out what you're trying to ask me. So why don't you just ask me and we'll have the conversation. So what we built is a K to corporate model. And what happens is we ask them and said, okay, if we gave you X amount of dollars directly to your school, supporting the technology of your school, staff development, hardware, software, infrastructure, to bring a lot of your educators and the campus itself up to the 21st century, what would that look like? On the flip side, we said, you've had decrease in funding. What's missing? So if you had social services, art, health, we already covered the technology piece, what's missing there? And we actually did a brainstorming session, and we built out a model that said in each of those categories, what community partners, what nonprofits as subject matter experts could fill those spaces, and met the standards for the state, the rubrics, and all the conditions that you needed to get them back on par. Well, that was an amazing eye-opening experience because a number of them, what they went and did their homework with and came back, saw that they overlapped. So we started putting the pieces together to build an integrated and articulated model, whereas the students built upon the experiences that the nonprofits brought in. They were building that platform and that continuity until they got all the way through high school. And at the end of that, we also offer some scholarships. And now we've been exploring some opportunities to bring them back in and work, not only during their high school years, but also when they move on and go back to university and come back in. And much like Symantec's, yes, it would be wonderful if we had openings for every student that comes through the program. That's not the reality, but they might very well go to one of our other business customers. They might go on and use our technology to develop something really unique and powerful in the community. And we've replicated that both in a charter school in Longmont, Colorado, and in Ireland, in Singapore, and now we've been working with a school in India. India is a little bit different. It doesn't work exactly the same way, but the concept of there is bringing in nonprofits and actual hands-on experience with our employees to give back. It's been in place just about 10 years now, and the art component we felt was, again, very critical to that thinking out of the box kind of idea, and bringing that value into the classroom and bringing it back to the corporation, and not just rote learning, but that exploratory and using the arts to help get their language skills and their developmental. We've got some guests in here using technology. I'll name Create TV. We've partnered with them where that's the blend of technology and art to tell your story and how to communicate. And we've really seen some great changes in some of our youth that might not have normally used their voice, but to come forward and feel very comfortable and then work in that collaborative environment and give back and think outside the box. So.
Great. Following, you had touched on something where you were talking about 21st century skills, and this question is actually for both of you. There's an ongoing concern that the U.S. public education system is still designed using 19th century industrialism techniques, and not that 21st century globalization and connectivity. Do you believe that tech companies can help address this issue? I'll start back with you, Patty, and then end with Cecily.
I absolutely do. I mean, without that ability to communicate and collaborate, we stay in a vacuum, in a void. And so we've done one simple project in helping to bring that forward. We do a virtual field trip. And so many of the schools that we work with are Title I, so special needs, low economics, whatever the situation may be. So while we have a school in Colorado that goes to our offices there, we have a school in San Jose that comes to our corporate campus, and the school in Ireland. And we show them the power of technology. We video conference them, and we give them the opportunity to share their stories and learn about the technology and how to collaborate and share, and the power. It doesn't mean you have to sit next to someone to do a project, but you could be working 24/7 around the world, and great ideas can be developed anywhere. And so we've really we demonstrated that to the kids, that look at what this technology can do for you, can open up your opportunity to explore, expand, create, and solve problems.
So yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, I think technology needs to be part of our education system. I think the three main ways that tech companies can make a difference is, one, through obviously philanthropic and cash donations and support. So for example, an organization we work with is Science Buddies. So a lot of you might know Science Buddies as the organization that provides wonderful science fair kits and resources to high school students. And we work with them on certain projects around, how to build a computer, how to do programming and things like that. The second area that I think tech companies can be really instrumental in is actually in donations. So donations of hardware, donations of software. So I think that's important, and it depends what you do as a company and what value you could bring to that. And the third area, and this is to kind of take off what you were saying, is the area around volunteering. So I think that our employees have a lot to give as far as mentoring and connecting with students on careers in technology and understanding how to use technology for their learning. Now, we've struggled with getting a certain segment of our population into the volunteer pool, and that's our engineers. Engineers make up a large percentage of our population, but they don't tend to volunteer for a lot of the events that some of the other employee population does. But what we find that they're getting excited about is the virtual volunteering. And so we've recently partnered with Code.org, where we're going to be Skyping our engineers into classrooms all around the U.S., where they will serve as mentors to students, talking to them about what their career in technology looks like, answering questions, and we hope that that's successful. I'll check back with you in 6 months and let you know how that goes. But I think those are the areas that technology companies can have the most impact. But I think it's really important. I think we're really behind, and I think in order for our young students and our growing workforce be competitive, technology needs to be a much bigger part of our educational system.
I was just going to add to that. We've just developed a STEAM Academy 2-week summer course with a local a Metro Ed, which is Silicon Valley Career Technical Ed. So it's really working on the, much like your cyber students, it's what we're doing with them. This summer it was all about aviation and giving them, many of these students are foster youth or have certain lifestyle situations where they might not get this in their home environment or in their school. So we brought them to this 2-week camp and giving them that opportunity for that hands-on learning. But what was interesting, you talked about the engineers, because it was a comfort zone for them to give back and help develop the curriculum, it was a little bit easier to get them to participate in the field trip, go develop the curriculum, go do the presentation. So much like yours, it's a new opportunity for us, and it's opening up their eyes, and we find a bit of a difference between our seasoned engineers and our entry-level professionals. Our entry levels are really excited about telling what they've just learned, and they have that giving heart, right? It's been part of how they've been groomed through their college years, and it's just what they expect a company to do. So it's a very different mix, and I don't know if you would agree with that, but knowing who to tap into to get certain things done has been very rewarding to see our young engineers want to get involved with the hands-on piece of it. It's making a difference.
And before we open to the audience with audience questions, I wanted to get your closing thoughts in 10 words or less.
Oh.
Start counting. What advice can you share with the audience in terms of interacting with tech companies?
Okay, well, I wrote mine down. See your donor as a true partner and consider their needs. There's a lot more I could say there, but 10 words.
Collaboration, communication, cooperation, and partners. That integration of those makes all the difference.
Well, I really appreciate it on a personal level. I learned a lot, and now it's time for questions from each of you. So please raise your hand, state your name and where you work, and then direct your question to the appropriate person. If you're comfortable, you can walk on up and repeat. This way it's going to be captured on the live streaming. If you'd rather keep your seat, then I'll try to paraphrase and capture it for you. So.
My name is Jenna. I'm from Mission Graduates. We're an after-school program in the Mission District. And
Jenna from Mission Graduates, an after-school program in the Mission District.
I'm wondering, it seems like you support organizations that are super close to your headquarters and really far away. In terms of Silicon Valley and San Francisco, do you find that your employees live here and want to support organizations right where they live in San Francisco versus in San Jose or in Santa Clara?
So it's to paraphrase again for our virtual audience, the question was about where employees live and work in terms of, do they volunteer next to the company headquarters or in their own hometowns? Is that accurate? Okay.
I would say it depends, and I know you're thinking, well, why does it depend? If it's on their time for a cause they care about, personally, it might be in their own neighborhood, their own home. When we're doing corporate projects, then it's usually during the work day and the work week, so they tend to support us in where our masses of our employees are when we're going as a department or as a larger corporation. And that stands true for the geographical spread as well. So where our hubs are and where our largest groups of employees are, that's where they will work when we're doing a corporate activity. But on a personal level, we see, particularly in the matching side of it all over the place, wherever their home is. A lot with their schools, they'll make a contribution to their child's school, and then they'll have it matched, or their volunteer hours.
Yeah, so we do have employees volunteer all over. They can leverage the Symantec Dollars for Doers program and get their hours matched. But we also have an office in San Francisco. And Patricia, do you happen to know how many employees we have there right now? couple hundred is what I'd say. So by the way, this is Patricia Nevers. She works with me. She's actually an employee of the Community Foundation, but she works with us at Symantec. She knows everything about our program, more than I do, so please follow up with Patricia. She's spectacular. But so we do have a site in San Francisco, and so our employees we do put on projects. And we consider, even though we're based in Silicon Valley, San Francisco is an important city to us. We do a lot in San Francisco, actually. So we do consider partnerships in the city. Yeah.
Okay. I think there was a question. Yeah.
I'm Alicia. I'm with a new nonprofit that's actually working with women in innovation that are already in tech companies. And I was wondering both of the
Alicia is working with a new nonprofit that works with innovation and technology companies
and diversity with them.
and diversity.
So are you seeing any sort of movement in tech for companies to actually try to increase diversity within their existing company rather than going to high schools, middle schools, but actually working within their workforce?
So, okay. So the
And
question
repeat
is,
the
are
questions.
we seeing any trends where companies are starting to look at increasing diversity within their workforce? So it's more internal versus external. So I'd say as tech companies, we're seeing a lot of that. There's been a lot of actual pressure lately from external groups and from within to really increase the diversity within the tech sector. If you look at recent data that's been published by lots of tech companies, so there's a lot of data out there. If you really look at the numbers, you see they look pretty bad. From a women's perspective, I think most tech companies, the better ones, you're seeing maybe 28 to 30% women in gender. You're seeing for professionals of color probably around 2%. And so these are not representative of the demographics that we have, in the U.S. as an example. And so, yes, tech companies are, and on the other side of that, I think tech companies also realize that there is a business case for diversity. And so they realize that having a more diverse force creates a more competitive and innovative environment. If everybody's not the same, we're bringing different ideas to the table, and we're also serving our customer base better because our customer base is diverse. And so, yes, we're definitely seeing that, and companies are definitely struggling with that. There go the pipeline issue, because in order to increase your workforce, you have to have a representative pool that you can select from. And so many of us are working with organizations starting from K through 12 education, but all the way up to I would say organizations like an important partner for Symantec is the Anita Borg Foundation, which focuses on women in tech and has a lot of great conferences and resources to bring more women into technology and connect women with companies.
I would echo the same thing. The other organization that we've partnered with recently for our women in technology is Watermark. So an opportunity for that advancement, networking, opportunities for growth, and so we have a strong program within the company called Watermark that organization we're partnering with.
And can I just add, because since obviously in my title it says diversity, so I feel pretty strongly about this issue. I think that's the reason that at Symantec, corporate responsibility, which tends to focus on maybe environmental initiatives or philanthropy and community relations, now also includes diversity. So it's come together under the same umbrella because we really see the connection between diversity and the other elements of corporate responsibility that we practice as a company.
Great.
Hi, my name is Ruby. I'm from Save the Bay. And I was wondering if you could speak to both what you do for environmental organizations in the Bay Area or abroad, and also if you've noticed any trends in competing environmental areas.
Do you want
Yeah.
to, no, go ahead.
In our case, that really falls.
Do you want to repeat
Oh, I'm sorry.
who it is?
One more time. Ruby?
With
And
Save the Bay.
with Save the Bay, and asking about opportunities of tech companies supporting environmental concerns. In my case, that falls under a different department. That falls in with our global site services and facilities and environmental health and safety. So while we partner, we look for opportunities. It's not something that I manage or oversee. But we do support the initiative if it's brought forward by an employee. Certainly if they want to do matching or giving, or they want to come forward and say, could we do a service project? It's certainly within the realm of consideration, but it's not something that I manage.
So at Symantec, environmental responsibility also falls under corporate responsibility department. What's great about that is I think we have the ability to match our philanthropy and community investment and employee volunteering with our environmental focus. So the areas that we focus on, when we have a robust green team, Patricia actually helps manage that, so we can ask Patricia. So we have a global green team that focuses on grassroots efforts around the company to engage employees. Right now we have a cup reduction campaign. We're going to move soon into a focus on reducing, conserving water. And so the green teams really help move and push a lot of those initiatives along. We have a global, same as you, environmental strategy. We have a climate change strategy. And then we partner with the nonprofits to move certain initiatives. So, for example, we partner with the Rainforest Alliance on initiatives around sustainable, trees and forests and carbon reduction. We partner with local nonprofits like Actera, and we partner with them on, we did a green garden at our site at Symantec, so employees could get involved with that. But we also partner on larger projects that support their initiatives. We partner with, so just, I think a lot of it is driven by what employees are interested in. So when employees come forward and they want to promote a certain nonprofit in the area, we tend to support. But also on a larger level, we work with organizations like Rainforest Alliance.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Metzger. I'm from Portola and Excelsior Family Connections.
Jerry from Portola and Excelsior Family Connections.
And my question actually is for you, Juliana.
Okay.
Early on, you said that Silicon Valley Community Foundation works with about 100 corporations, helping them guide, manage, work in their advice funds. And some of them I know are very public, like Cisco has its own process. But others are kind of hidden. How do we learn about them? How do we get you and your 10 colleagues or 9 colleagues that also work in this field to know about us so that when you're talking to these companies, you can say, oh, I know about this. This organization falls well within what you're talking about. How do we learn that? How do we connect that way?
That's a really great question. And we actually have about 15 of us on our corporate responsibility team. So the question, thank you, is how do nonprofits come to the attention of Silicon Valley Community Foundation so that in our work with our corporate clients, of which was accurately stated we have about 100 of them, that we partner with, how can we learn about what the nonprofits are doing in order to best position and advocate for them when we're talking with our companies? We do that in a lot of ways. We have continual learning. For example, last week I hosted a brown bag for my colleagues for a nonprofit called You Aspire. You Aspire just came into the Bay Area, and they help address the financial aid complexities for first-generation college applicants to sort through. And it was something that I knew would be of interest to the companies that I work with, and I had known about them, but I wanted to expose it to the folks that I work with. So I hosted a Lunch and Learn brown bag, bribed my colleagues with baked goods that I had made, and invited the nonprofit in to share their experiences and give an overview of what they do. They also created a Leave Behind one page that we keep internally. And as opportunities arise when we're working with our companies and we hear about something or an issue that they're working on that we feel that there could be a nonprofit that we know of, that we've vetted, that we trust, that we've learned about, we'll bring it to their attention. And hopefully, we've got that relationship and that trust established with our corporate colleagues to where, we can have a conversation on what best makes sense for them. So I hope that answers your question, and I'm always open to learning more about what is going on, particularly in the greater Bay Area, because we, as I had mentioned, we don't just work with companies based with focus strictly in Silicon Valley. We kind of work throughout the entire landscape. So I've got a couple of my colleagues here, as well as Patricia. I've got Sean and Sophie. Anything to add to that on how we work with our companies? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you all on the spot.
I would say
And you're either going to have to get up to the mic, or I'm going to have to repeat your question or your answer. This is Sophie, by the way. Here. You can go up to the podium.
So I would say a few of us work with companies in the Bay Area and elsewhere that they have grant rounds that require employee champions. And so I would say connect with your networks, your volunteers, to see if you have connections at those companies, and ask those employees if they'd be interested in working with you to champion your nonprofit for a grant.
Great, thank you. All right.
Hi, my name is Meg Watkins. I'm from City Year. We're an education organization. We work in the lowest performing schools in and around San Jose. So my question is about employee engagement. I think we would all really love to have, full-fledged volunteer programs and be able to accommodate a lot of volunteers from our corporate sponsors. But the reality is that we don't have the capacity to manage a big volunteer program. So I wondered, you mentioned Skyping with engineers into coding classes. That's a brilliant idea. And I wondered if you had any other ideas around things that employees get really excited about that could be sort of lower touch for us, because we're not able to do a really high touch program.
I'm happy. You want to start? So I have one idea that comes first, and then I'm sure you one thing that works is, the question is, not all nonprofits can accommodate large employee volunteer opportunities, and so do we have any other ideas to engage employees, but at a different level, or maybe a smaller level? So the one idea that comes to mind for us is our on-site field trips. So we like to host different nonprofits that work with students to come on site and do tours or shadow, and that could be, ranging from, just a few students to a much larger group. So that's just one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, some of the things that we've done in addition to the field trips, and our field trips are geared more towards a school as opposed to a nonprofit. The things that we have done is that if you had something that you needed us to assemble, build, collect, we could do that on site and then deliver it to you. We could do something where we've set up a conference room. It doesn't work great all the time. I kind of have to find my ringers to really drive it, but put something in as a drop-in center in a conference room that says, hey, build a kit, take 5 minutes, take a break, do that sort of thing, and then we'll deliver it to you. Sometimes it's even as working through, and if we have an office move and you give me a heads up and say, hey, I'm looking for file folders, or I'm looking for, if it's in kind, and we're doing a sort, if it doesn't go to Raft or somebody else, or at least I have you on my list, I can say, look, I know you don't need a ton of volunteers, but can you use these items? Or, I think it really starts with a conversation. We don't have a prescribed program of how we do it. It's like, let's talk about it. Let's explore it. Let me see if I can find a solution to help you. And if I can't, maybe I know somebody else who can. But it's not always, well, you have to do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays with 500 people. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work for me, and it's not going to work for you. So let's have a conversation and say, what can we do together?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great. Those are some good ideas.
Good. Use them.
Remember, I am.
I want to talk to you later
I knew
about
you were
that
gonna have-
cybersecurity
yeah,
stuff. Let's talk.
Yeah, you're close enough to.
I can walk on over. Hello, everyone. So my name is Jessica. I'm from United Way of the Bay Area, and we've been in the Bay Area for over 90 years, 93 years, so we have a history with a lot of different companies. Our model is based off of, in terms of fundraising, About 85% of all of our dollars raised are from us going into corporations, giving presentations, asking their employees directly for money. My question, and to support not only United Way, but whatever charity they choose. So my question would be, in the tech sector, in that field, do you still see these excitement around these big, robust employee giving campaigns that happen once a year, that have people the option for these matching gifts, everything to happen all at once? Is that still part of the plan moving forward, do you think, for the tech industry to have these kind of robust annual campaigns?
I'll speak to that first. No, we do not, because we, and not to shut you down so quickly, sorry about that. While I like your idea, it has not seemed to work. People like that individual, smaller, creative, not being channeled into a central focus. They want to do what they want to do. The closest we come to something that's centralized is we do a global day of giving. And in that, it's still very unique by region. We start, as we call, follow the rising sun, and each of our offices around the world, they actually pick what they want to do and how they want to give. There's nothing really that comes from the top that says, on this day you will do that. It doesn't fit with our culture and with our employee makeup. So it might be different for something a little bit larger, but it hasn't worked for us.
So agreed. I don't think that culturally, what I've seen sometimes happen to those campaigns, it almost becomes a requirement that employees give. They feel pressured to donate, and I don't think that resonates well with the tech employee community. An example of something that we might do that's like that is during the holiday season, we support Second Harvest locally, and so in addition to the food drive, where employees can bring canned items or boxed food, Second Harvest has really encouraged us to donate dollars. Instead, just goes a lot further, and they can use it more. And so we do have a giving campaign where we try to encourage. We do a competition between buildings, and we encourage employees to donate, and then we match the donation, or have a day of triple matching or whatever. It gets kind of ridiculous sometimes. Yeah. We're just matching lots, but it's to try to get everybody to rally around it. And even that, I think, is a little difficult because everyone has their own. We can only do that regionally. We're a global company. I don't see anything working on a global basis that way.
Hi, I'm Darren Hollingsworth with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital based out of Memphis. So we have donors in the Bay Area who are supporting curing cancer and saving children. We also have a significant education component of training researchers, and our CEO is looking to a PhD program. My question, though, is really do your offices, and even in the Community Foundation, are you working with or mentoring smaller tech companies to build their sense of corporate philanthropy? Do you have peers up and coming, because you have customers in tech? Do you see any relationships building there and then following your lead in your philanthropy?
I was going to say the closest we have is CCRC. So within the Bay Area, it's CCRC, Corporate Community Relations Consortium. It's not an official member organization. We don't pay fees or dues or sign any kind of agreements, but we come together as professional colleagues and share and talk about what's happening in our field, what's happening in the area of corporate social responsibility. I think more of us tend not to use the word, at least I do, philanthropy. It's more about an integrated and holistic program and not just about writing the check. And so yes, there are some new up-and-comers that we share our tips and tricks. I don't think anybody is reluctant about sharing. I think we're pretty open about helping one another.
I mean, I think it's actually a pretty great and well-run organization given that the lack of formality around it. One of the things I do think that makes it work, though, is that it limits the participation of consultants, and it's really for corporate professionals to come together and share ideas and talk about challenges and things like that. So we do work that way. And then I think through the Community Foundation, we also sometimes are asked to work with other organizations or smaller companies and share ideas. I mean, one thing that I like about the area of corporate responsibility is that there really isn't a lot of competition between companies around this area. We tend to be very open and share ideas, because when we see, I would, after this, I'm going to say, well, at Xilinx, what they do is blah, blah, blah. We should be doing that, right? So I think we borrow from each other all the time, and it helps all of us push our programs forward.
And I would just echo that. In our work with companies, we'll work with early stage companies from the get-go, and we'll do it. They don't even have to have a corporate advised fund with us. We can do it through, they can buy like a bank of hours with us, and we can consult with them on getting their corporate responsibility program started. Similar to the CCRC that they're talking about, which is down in the South Bay, up here in the Bay Area is another organization called the Bay Area Corporate Volunteer Council, the Volunteer Center, which is very similar in terms that it brings together corporate colleagues to share best practices and challenges and issues, and they get together and convene, as well as email each other quite frequently. It might be, hey, I've got to put on an all-hands volunteer day. Any tips on any sorts of nonprofits in San Francisco that I should consider that can accommodate 200 people? So you'll get all sorts of dialogue around that. And as both of our panelists have said, it's a pretty non-competitive environment. It's kind of unusual. I think that they look a lot on how to collaborate and partner together. I don't think that they look at it as necessarily stealing each other's ideas, but maybe enhancing and sharing and expanding on them. And that collaboration and partnership is really key. At the Community Foundation, we also host convenings where we'll bring in companies and help train and educate them on what is happening in the field, educate them on some of the challenges that nonprofits are having, and just kind of help raise the water, so to speak. We've got a corporate philanthropy institute happening in September where companies like Xilinx and Symantec are invited to attend and speak and share their experiences. So it seems to work well. Other questions? All right, well, you guys have been terrific, and I'm going to stick around for a while, and I'm happy to answer anything one-on-one, but I'd like to thank Patty Nation with Xilinx and Cecily Joseph with Symantec for being so candid and sharing of all of your experiences, and any sort of wrap-up words for the audience before we conclude.
From my perspective, I would say from working with educators and nonprofits, so closely for the last 10 years, it's really about communication and collaboration. We're all so busy working in our own spheres that we forget to pause and sit down and have a conversation and say, so, right, like today, I'm like, really, you working on that? We need to talk. Because we're so busy moving forward with what we're chartered to do that sometimes we're our own worst enemies in stopping and saying, what's happening with my colleague? Where can we partner? Where can we collaborate to have a deeper impact? So if you have opportunities to get out there, network, share, I would encourage you to do that. That's where you're going to get the most learning.
So, and I guess in closing, I would say that even though it seems like corporations, especially in this format, are the ones that have we have the money, supposedly, and the power to make these decisions, the reality is we cannot do anything without you as partners. I mean, we cannot move the needle forward at all. So, as Patty says, the collaboration is really important, and finding that place where we both can move our initiatives forward and impact the greater good is really the win-win for all of us. So.
Thank you.